This is particularly relevant when we consider how to respond to the UK housing crisis. Even though owner-occupation of residential property peaked in 2002 at almost 70% of the population, it's actually down 5% now after 2 Tory governments. Our political and economic model is still based on notions of the property-owning democracy. So we've all grown up to see this as normal and desirable, and many of us have, I hold my hand up, have benefited financially from rapidly rising values of our major light investment in our homes. Since the recent crash, however, when this model was tested almost to destruction by the failures of the big institutional lenders, we started to look more critically at the long-term implications of such a system. And as one or two people, I think Maria talked about the Dutch and Scandinavian experience, when you look across the channel, this idea that somehow this property-owning democracy is natural or desirable, it completely falls apart because they don't do it like that in Europe. Even extremely well-heeled people in Germany live in rented houses, are content to do so, there's no stigma in it. The German housing market is very stable. The costs of housing have risen about 2% a year steadily for 30 years. They're about half what they are earning, So actually, there are much better ways to do it, and the evidence is not very far away if you want to look for it. Land trusts therefore seek to hold property assets in stewardship in perpetuity. Once asset value financing is rejected, however, assembling finance, as we've already heard from others, and particularly Featherstone, assembling finance to create community-based developments is challenging. Development costs are essentially built up from land costs, building costs, finance costs, professional fees, and developer profit. So CLTs can largely forgo a profit motive once their operating costs are found, but being small, they're largely locked into the same market prices and market mechanisms as commercial or public sector developers. So put simply, therefore, it's not possible to borrow a lot of money, go out and buy a site, commission a design, commission a contractor, build houses, put people in paying social and affordable rents, and pay back what you borrowed, because the sums don't work. And, once again, heard this already. So what Land Trust don't do, and what we, particularly in Bristol Land Trust, do, is we try and fill some of that missing gap in the finance. It's about a third, actually, or a quarter, or it depends on the project. We try and do it by getting some public funding, by cross-subsidy, by an element of self-build or self-finish, by a resident capital contribution, as some other people have talked about in co-housing schemes, and also by another aspect of co-housing, which is somewhat untested so far, but we believe in it, which is you don't need to own so much private space if there are very good communal facilities. So in principle, you can take a smaller footprint in your privately owned space and therefore incur less costs.